Good morning. Good to be back here again today on our program Summit, coming to you live from Lagos. I am Jumoke Michaels. You're welcome, Banji.
Jumoke, even though would I say I'm a sports enthusiast, but I am. I should admit I'm one, even if I don't watch all the games or all the sporting activities. But I'm interested in what happens to Nigeria, and I want to believe our people, our representatives at the Commonwealth Games, are actually pulling their weight, doing Nigeria proud there with a couple of goals in our kitty already. I wish them the very, very best so that Nigeria can be put on the world map once again. My name is Banji Busari. It's the midweek edition of our program Summit. You're welcome.
All right, so thank you for that update on sports. But meanwhile, today we're talking politics, and I think we're wading into a very uncommon aspect of
common yet very, very crucial.
Yeah, uncommon yet very, very crucial, that has to do with fixing our economy. We're going to be talking about the role of volunteering. I can just imagine someone saying, what's that? Who is volunteering for what? All right, but that's what we'll be doing today, because it's one of the aspects that we can take advantage of to fix our economy. And we have with us in the studio this morning Mr. Eugene Osigwe. He's a public affairs analyst. I know he's much more than that because of what he's going to talk about this morning. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
It's our pleasure to have you. We want to deviate a little from politics. Let's give people other aspects of our national life, what's so vital to our development, our growth as a nation. And to kickstart the discussion, before we came on set, we're talking basically about the third sector of the economy, which sounded strange to even myself. But you've done a little bit of enlightenment on that, though it's still not sufficient for me. I'm sure I'll be better enlightened by the time this program is over. The third sector of the economy, people are familiar with the formal sector. Nigerians are equally familiar with the informal sector. And I think that's where my knowledge about economy stops. But you have also brought up the third sector. Now, this third sector, can you give us an insight into what is the third sector of the economy?
Well, thank you very much for having me. By definition, the third sector is the sector that drives the activity of a people without profit being the motive. We have, in a nutshell, we have the fourth sector, the first sector, which is the government sector. We have the private sector, which is the set for business. Then we now have the third sector, which is not set for business. Every economy stands on a tripod, and that's the private, the public, and the voluntary. So the voluntary sector mostly is referred to as the third sector, depending on the country or the exposition of the people who are referring or discussing the sector. So in the Western world, it's mostly referred to as the voluntary sector. And in this part of the world, it's called the NGOs. But the term NGO narrows it to those who do intervention. It's much more than that. So if the third sector is not well developed, if you check out the indices of development, you will see that countries referred to as third world countries or developing countries are those who have not paid serious attention to the voluntary sector, or otherwise referred to as the third sector.
Now, you mentioned voluntary, that's non-profit organizations. Now, this act of volunteerism, for us in this part of the world, of course, we are aware of organizations like we have the Sigmas, we have the Rotaries, we have the Lions, and several others. What actually drives volunteerism? Why is it not so much entrenched in our system here?
Well, it's a misunderstanding if you say volunteerism is not entrenched in our system. Because if you go back to the beginning of our civilizations, before the intervention of the Western world, our system ran on voluntary association. We had a system. We had a class system. We had the 8th grade system. They come together and they do what we call support system for everybody. They rotate it. And that is how those economies were sustained, especially because they were mostly agro-economy. So they come together in groups and do that. You also have cooperatives among the market women who come together to register associations. They also fall under this sector because the aim is to support each other to grow. We grow together, you know, and we share the benefit of growing together. Now, if you look at those people who fought for independence in our country, many of them went through school through these voluntary efforts. Communities came together, put resources together, and be able to support the brightest among them. They even send them abroad, you know. But I think where we got it wrong is that when those of them who went out to the country saw something new, they thought that new is better. And when they came back, they looked down on that system that had produced them. And that is where the problem started.
All right, so we are very familiar with the formal sector. We are familiar with the informal sector. We are not too used to this third force or this third sector. Sorry, third sector. I'm trying to go into politics. We're not used to this third sector, which is the volunteering sector. Now, is this something that has always been there, something that we've always been practicing? Is it part of our, let me say, DNA?
Yeah, it is.
African DNA.
It is part of our
in what ways has it always been part of our DNA? That's
what I just explained, that our community system is even about communal living, where each one gives to the best of what he can give for the benefit of the society. So we know it. We don't need to be taught about communism. We don't need to be taught about communal life. It is there. It is part of Africa. You know? So now, we have not been able to take it, to allow it to evolve to where it can become entrenched in our conscience. Like I said, we think that what is new is better. So we took the new from the Western world, who went through this greatest process of development as well, and took them when they have reached the peak of their development, and took the best among them in their society, and brought it here and decided to do away with the system that actually laid the foundation for our development.
All right, so what are these new that you're talking about that has retarded our progress in this area?
Okay, first of all, let us look at our health system. We have a system of curing people when they were ill, but we have not developed that traditional health system to a level where we can document, where we can now verify, where we can give it to somebody else to produce, to follow a system. It was still kept within us. That is one aspect of doing away with our own development. But because we now see, for example, when you take a drug, it has been packaged, well packaged. You now take it and take it in, because all the sanitary conditions have been met. You now take it in and you feel that it is better than what you have. You know, that is an aspect of taking the new.
Because it doesn't have those.
No, but we have not.
You don't know how much to take. You don't know how many times you should take it. That's probably why.
With the support of the Western education, which is good, we would have been able to go back and now begin to gradually develop the system to that which we are now taking, which is a finished product. So there is that gap. And it is there that we fall into the category of developing nation or third world. So to bridge the gap, then we must now begin to go back and see those value systems which are driven by community efforts, and take that which they have produced and upgrade it to the level of that which we think is better.
Yeah, no. You remember, sorry, Ben, you remember during the COVID that there were so many times that they asked people who are into traditional medicine to actually find a cure for COVID. But at the end of the day, I don't know how far that went anyway, because the government eventually has not come out to say if there's any traditionally packaged, should I call it drug, that anyone has packaged locally that can be used in Nigeria to treat COVID.
Yes, but you see, those who drive our system are still entrenched in that new is better, foreign is better. If we have taken the effort we have used to bring those ones from within and channel into that which we have, we will grow these things. They are there amongst us. So, and in the community where these things are entrenched, money is not put forward to drive this cure system. Now, because the economy is getting very difficult, we are forced now to go back. So that COVID provided us an opportunity, a window of opportunity for us to be able to showcase what we have amongst our traditional health practitioners.
Still referring to the COVID era, since you have actually touched on it. You recall that at the peak of COVID, the government came and actually sought the partnership of the private sector in terms of palliatives.
Yeah.
These palliatives were giving billions for the benefit of Nigerians. Now let's look at that, and let's look at that the other NGOs that preceded it. We have the Lumelu Foundations, we have Dangote Foundations, and several other foundations that have been existed even before COVID. What's your assessment of, since we're talking about volunteerism, what's your assessment of all these NGOs, and how impactful have their efforts been?
Let me say right away, if not for the effort of volunteerism, no government in the world would have been able to cope with the pressure of COVID. And you see, corporate bodies came together. It is not part of their objective of being set up. They came together, CEOs came together, they put funds aside to be able to support this. They even built isolation centers. These are parts of volunteerism. People cooked food, they distributed to those who they don't know, but this window of COVID offered our government an opportunity to pay more attention to this sector, the act of volunteerism. Unfortunately, like everything in Nigeria, we have allowed the opportunity to pass by. So now you spoke about Tony Elumelu Foundation. He's doing intervention, he's doing a lot. But Tony Elumelu is not the only rich man in Nigeria. We have so many people who are endowed with money. So what we are saying, that if you have been blessed, give back to the society. That is an act of volunteerism. Polio was eradicated almost eradicated globally by Rotary. Rotary is operating in that sector. JCI, you mentioned, Lion International, they all operate under the third sector. Now, and many of the UN bodies came into being for intervention after the First or Second World War, to set up bodies to do interventions for nations whose economy has almost collapsed. So you cannot overemphasize the importance of this third sector in the growth of any economy. So the challenge now is that our policy shapers and makers should now sit back and begin to see how were our community run based on our community system, and begin to go back and now learn from it, take from that as the communal system, that which is beneficial, that which enabled our empires to function for hundreds of years before the intervention of civilization, and borrow from it. Let's go back and begin to retrace the progression. Discard that which is not good and take from it that which is better. We don't have to just sweep away everything and say, because new is better, we go there and bring. That's why many of them sit down, you say, okay, you see, our educational system, for example, has collapsed based on this new is better. They went there, they saw something better, they said, okay, now that is better than us, let me send my children there. It now became a trend. So people like Tony Elumelu, Dangote, Danjuma, they should be commended. But let me say,
and several others anyway.
Yeah, they should be commended, and people should emulate. But let me say that there is a perception here about foundations. People set up foundations largely to promote their personal interests, because the government does not pay attention to this sector. A foundation that is set up, once you set up a foundation, that foundation is supposed to exist in perpetuity. That is why you have the Rockefeller Foundation, the Ford Foundation are there, hundreds, decades of years after those who set them up, no longer there. Why does it happen? It is because the money you set aside for your foundation is no longer your money. You don't have access to it. It's an investable fund. A percentage of that money is what you now plow back to do interventions for the objective of which that foundation is set up. The remaining one is plowed back to the foundation to grow the fund you have set aside. So if you follow that process, your foundation will grow. But in this part of the world, you discover that once the owner of the foundation dies with it because the regulation framework is not there, then the understanding of why foundations are set up is also not there. So we cannot separate the third sector and the private sector or the voluntary sector. We intermix them in one bouquet, and that is the challenge we have. So we are now saying, look, this is how it is done, and this is how you must do it, and these are the benefits of paying attention to this third sector.
I guess that beyond what you have just explained, there's this trust deficit, even in running NGOs and all that. I mean, as far as motive is concerned, we are aware of several politicians or would-be politicians that set up foundations, spending millions of naira to woo the would-be voters. And at the end of the day, once their goal or their ambition is accomplished, they turn their back. This NGO becomes moribund, nobody runs it anymore. We have several examples. You cited the example of not separating the founder from the NGO itself. Situation where the founder dips his hand, removes or withdraws money or resources from the purse of the NGO. How well or what role can the government play in this regard to ensure that these foundations follow the normal best practices culture?
Yes, the government first of all has to understand how the sector works. There is no point reinventing the wheel. In civilized world, they have a framework of regulating this sector. They should understudy it. They should not only take that which is convenient, they should also take that which is beneficial to the society. So they should go study what it is, how it is done, what are the regulatory opportunity, what are the regulations in those societies. So they should study it and bring it here and give it to our legislators to give it a framework so that those people, when they now go into their foundation to take money, it becomes a criminal offense. It is criminal for you to set up a foundation and not devolve yourself from the foundation. So you must separate the two. Those are two separate entities. You have given, and you should take your eye off what you have given.
All right, so let's look at this issue of IDPs. I know they abound, especially in the northern part of Nigeria, and we've heard several times that it's NGOs, private individuals who have been volunteering to take care of these people, looking out for them. Most of the time they say government doesn't even bother about them. They do not check on them and give them things. So that issue is an indigenous problem, is in Nigeria presently. Now, how do you think that government can actually be more involved in that, aside leaving it to volunteers, the care of IDPs?
Well, the NGOs who do interventions for IDPs, we must commend their efforts, especially some of them who are working in very dangerous terrain, like in the Northeast. Yes, we must commend their effort. But, like I said, government has to go back to understudy our value system before the arrival of civilization. How were we able to manage our environment?
Things were in this volatile, I have to remember.
Yes, but they were intertribal wars. They were intertribal wars. We have kidnapping then. You had raidings. You had all sorts. Only that it was not at this scale. They were there. But how were they able to check them? So what were they doing right then? So the government must now begin to look inward and take from the advanced society their regulatory framework and take from our environment how it was done earlier before the arrival of civilization. Mix the two, take the one that is good here, the one that is good here, blend them. We have people who are exposed, who are well-traveled. We have people who know what giving is. Giving is an intricate nature of every human being. In fact, the only religion you have is the religion of giving, which is humanity. And that is why some of this known religion made it a cornerstone of their teaching. Each one will always say, thy neighbor, thy neighbor. Who is thy neighbor? So if you think along that line, you see that volunteerism is as simplistic as it could possibly be. It is not something complicated. It's something we know. It is there. It's the value we carry within ourselves that is driving this volunteerism. What we are now saying is that, look, government, go back. Don't close your eye to it because you are in government today and you can afford all the beautiful things of the world. Tomorrow we catch up with you or catch up with your generation. So now begin to look inward and see how together, tapping on the effort of those who are driving this system, tapping on their effort and collectively begin to develop it. It's not what can be achieved overnight. Rotary is about 114 years old today, but it was started by one man. You know, and with a group of 4 friends. Paul Harris. So that is how it is. So make a start. We should not allow the challenges to overwhelm us. Let us start.
Okay, let's
and that is what we're saying.
All right, let's look at the sustainability, viability, and then let me say the strength of these NGOs or even volunteerism as a whole in an economy that is almost comatose, that is struggling for survival. Now, how well can the NGOs or the volunteerism succeed? I mean, young men are struggling to gain employment. Would you ask such people to, I mean, to
take out
pay,
of what they have.
They take out of what they don't even have to give? Or somebody who has trained, is a teacher, is a graduate, has not found a job. You have asked him to coach the young ones in the neighborhood, even though he himself is struggling to survive. So let's look at the economy. How well can volunteerism thrive in an economy that's struggling for survival?
Interesting. You see, for those who have, no matter how little, there are grades of those who have. The first thing you must ask yourself is that man who is in need, why is he or she crossing your path? That is the way you have to look at it. Can you do something to help? It's just, when we talk about giving, it's not all about money. People are suffering from depression today. They are committing suicide. They have money. See, what is it there for you to help, to assist? It could be just a word of advice. It could be a smile. A smile can go a long way to do something. So we must now ask ourselves, first of all, why have we found ourselves in this peculiar environment? What lessons are we drawing from there? What is the humanity in us? How do we allow it to have expression in growing our environment? We should not look at those with the big bank account. You and I, there are a lot we can do amongst ourselves. Interaction. Even engage and meaningful discussion goes a long way to encourage. And if we begin to share these values amongst ourselves, somebody who has means may take action, but we must kickstart the process. We must all get involved. So we should not look at it that only those who have means can give. No. At that point, no. But the religious bodies have a lot of role to play because they have free money.
Call it free money.
Yes, they have a lot of free money at their disposal. For example, somebody who says he runs a religious group have 1, 2, 3 jets, and people of their widow's mites are contributing 50 naira regularly as their offerings, and you collect it and you fly a jet, why not sell 2 of the jets and use it to empower members of your congregation?
Or even sell all.
So they have a lot, in fact, to kickstart and jumpstart this economy. Now, under the condition we find ourselves right away, they have a lot to play, a lot of
They
role
have
to
schools that
But the schools are not,
established to assist the government.
they are not affordable. The schools are not affordable. Can you imagine if the schools established by the missionaries, they have to put a fee that the indigenes cannot afford?
How many would have been educated now?
They who are missionaries today, their chain would have still remained as uneducated people in Western education. So they have a big role to play, and they must know, you see, what shapes a man's view in life is your concept of death. The concept of death you have about yourself determines how you relate with your environment. You know, for example, those jets, for example, what happens when a person is not there? It will be sold. So the only eternal value any human being has is what you give to your neighbor. That is the only thing you possess. How you are able to touch the life of your neighbor. It is not for nothing that all the books talked about their neighbor. So it is a universal truth that what you voluntarily give, that is the only thing you own.
So at the end of the day, we should not get fixated on what government can do.
No, we should not get fixated. Our pressure coming together can kickstart emotion, and the government have no choice but to key into it.
Well, we have this generation of young ones who can never do anything for you without being paid. And you said volunteering is about doing something without expecting to be paid. How do we inculcate this into, especially the younger generation?
First of all, who are their role models? You have to look at the lifestyle of those who they aspire to be like and begin to know the thinking behind their action. So we must now begin to change gradually. Those people, like I said one man started Rotary. And Rotary has today almost eradicated polio from the face of the earth. So that is an ambitious goal that we thought was not possible, but we have seen that one man's volition can do a lot. So if you have the drive, why not start? I don't have to wait for you or wait for you. I will start. Those who feel connected with me will want to associate with it. It's challenging, it's difficult, it's frustrating, but again, you don't have to throw up your hand in the air. Start. If you don't start, you cannot achieve anything.
Why is volunteerism more successful in those advanced countries than here?
Because they have humanity in them. Their humanity is still alive. And here, our humanity is almost asleep. It is gradually dragging into a state of death. Let me put it that way.
It's about me, myself, and I.
Yes. So those people, they have humanity in them. And to encourage that humanity, they now have a framework with which to express it. The government appreciates you when you do something. You are appreciated, you are recognized, you are rewarded. They have a reward system for selfless giving. But here, we begin to think, don't mind him, he's just doing it for something to gain. You don't do anything here without people expecting that you are plotting to do something. That's it. So we must now individually, as our holy books tells us, take that which has to do with humanity and implement it in yourself and your local environment together. A light here, a light there. We shall light up the darkness.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
That's a very timely discussion.
It will come. This is just, we're just kickstarting. I'm sure volunteerism will be our own DNA too on this program.
Thank you so much, sir. Mr.
welcome.
Eugene Osigwe, thank you for joining us. All right, so we'll be transiting to the next segment of the program, and we'll have a package from